let's talk about the legal stuff before we get into the fun. Welcome back to the place to be, reviews. I missed you. Thanks. Hope you subscribed. Enjoy the content and get ready because we're about to talk some Rise of Skywalker. But before we do that, here's all the places you can find us on social media. Now, without further ado, let's get into this movie, shall we, kids? It's going to be fun. Oh, the Rise of Skywalker. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you this with certainty. I have just watched the leaked ending to The Rise of Skywalker. It leaked on YouTube. I watched it because I'm going to see this and I already knew it was going to be trash. I'm sorry. But I'm not going to apologize. I'm not. I simply will not apologize for not blindly consuming based on a logo and being a discerning customer. It has nothing to do with not liking women. It has nothing to do with being a neckbeard. It has nothing to do with who I support politically. It has nothing to do with being an incel because let's be honest, I've watched a lot of the interactions in comment sections and the people that use the word incel, well, I've done some research and I look at their profiles and normally 9 times out of 10 it says single and you look at them and well, they're projecting. So all that out of the way, I'm sure we're going to have some of the same ugly discourse between the fandoms that came after The Last Jedi, but the only difference is the critics just blew their load over that dumpster fire of a movie. This one, they're not. Because this one undermined their darling The Last Jedi, so now the critics are universally panning this. With 135 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, it sits right now. Well, we'll take a look at that in a second. Let's go over to Polygon, who has, of course, been a supporter of this because, well, because it's a woman. And I like Daisy Ridley. Don't get me wrong. I think she's a fine actress. I just think she's was given a horrible part that's written terribly because, well, let's be honest, J.J. Abrams admitted he doesn't know how to end sequels. Rian Johnson is a complete hack who does not belong in charge of a major franchise. And if you try to throw Knives Out at me as a good movie, I watched it. It's not good. It's nothing but a political statement. It's basically Rian Johnson's Twitter feed in the form of a movie. Okay? The Force Awakens was a piss poor copy of A New Hope. Of course it made $2 billion because it lived on member berries. And that's all it relied on. The Last Jedi was trash. And weirdos and people with purple hair that are male feminists watch those kind of movies because all it focused on was representation and political commentary on today's society, which is not what we want from a galaxy far, far away, where these problems probably don't even exist. Oh, looks like the critics kind of turned their backs on this one. Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is a defeat, even in moments of triumph. J.J. Abrams dives straight down the nostalgia well in Episode 9. This is by Tasha Robinson. Editor's note. This review reveals no specific plot points from Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. Polygon will have more in-depth story analysis. It's been more than 40 years since George Lucas launched an entire universe with 1977 Star Wars, later styled as Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope. The film was an instant hit, in part because it was such an original take on familiar material. Lucas drew heavily on classic westerns and Akira Kurosawa films to shape his galaxy far, far away. But he gave the setting a fresh and highly specific new face and tone, shaping the past while revamping it into the future has been built into the Star Wars DNA from the very beginning. So J.J. Abrams' finale, Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, with its aggressive, relentless copycatting of the past, should fit thematically into Lucas's vision. Doesn't feel like it's respecting the series past. It's more like Abrams obsessively hiding behind it. Back when the Star Wars trilogy was about to launch we're going to redo that part. Back when the final Star Wars trilogy was about to launch with 2015's The Force Awakens, fans were vocally nervous about what Abrams would do to their beloved franchise. He had previously resurrected the Star Trek film franchise into a sleeker, younger, much more foul-mouthed and smart-assed form. His alteration of the Trek canon included some major rewrites of beloved characters and a newly revved-up tone. While some audiences embraced the changes, others bridled at them and openly wondered what Star Wars would look like if Abrams tried to give it an equally frat boy-minded mentality. But Abrams took a different track. The Force Awakens embraced a fan nostalgia by recreating A New Hope for a new era. Half sequel, half stealth remake, The Force Awakens introduced a reskinned Empire a new Darth Vader, a gender swap Luke Skywalker, and a modernized R2D2, and a whole lot more familiar elements. Fans and critics alike were generally positive about the film, which set out to hand Star Wars over to a new generation of young heroes. At the same time, it turned those characters into fan avatars who thrilled at the chance to hang out with their heroes, Luke Skywalker, Leia Organa, and Han Solo, even as those older heroes were in the process of moving on. Rian Johnson's sequel, The Last Dumpster Fire, leaned much harder on the hand over this new generation idea with a kill your idols approach that subverted fan expectations and openly asked viewers to accept that the series was evolving away from the Skywalker lineage that defined Lucas's original film trilogy. As a result, The Last Jedi has proved incredibly contentious, with the detractors varying mostly in whether they blame the message, the execution, or both. Seemingly leery of that divisive response, Abrams steers The Rise of Skywalker straight back into the nostalgia courting approach that served him so well with The Force Awakens. And here's a funny shot of Darth Dumbass and Moray Sue in the throne room of the Death Star, which was blown into a million pieces, but because my plot, it survived. The most notable effect of that plan is just that as The Force Awakens mirrors A New Hope in characters, conflicts, and beats, Episode 9 closely mirrors 83's Return of the Jedi to the point where savvy fans could easily call out half the locales, enemies, and story turns well in advance. Well, the leaks helped with that. It's a remarkably safe and timid approach, one that consciously reflects viewers' cinematic past back at them, with a "you loved this last time, right? Here's more of it" attitude. It's the rom-com method of storytelling, essentially cinema as comfort food. The story is a pat and predictable enough to be soothing, and the surprises exist only in the details that mix up the story. In this case, those telling details largely come in the form of abruptly introduced new abilities that change the dynamics of a lot of conflicts. The new Sith abilities that drive the plot may rankle purists, but they're part of the buy in for the story. Yeah, fuck you. The new space battle tactics are much more likely to frustrate viewers who remember past canon, and fans who raged over The Last Jedi's introduction of heretofore unseen Force powers aren't going to have an easier time with The Rise of Skywalker, which pushes the Force even further into the realm of all-powerful, all-flexible magic bullet, so it's a deus ex machina than ever before. Those abilities come to Rey, of course they do, and more notably her fated adversary Kylo Ren, whose speed to a forced series of confrontations that forms the movie's backbone, and to enable a number of startlingly visually playful meetings of the mile. All this charging about would feel more consequential if the character's goals didn't feel so arbitrary. Early on, Abrams and co-writer Chris Terrio introduced one of the laziest cinematic tropes, an all-important MacGuffin the characters must find to move forward. This is where the video game analogy came from. The protagonists spend a great deal of time and energy chasing this object, but they're constantly interrupted by new and changing goals of the moment, which are often reached and resolved in a blind rush. It frequently feels as if no one really cares what the characters are pursuing as long as they're doing it loudly, quickly, and with plenty of callbacks to the original trilogy, from characters to situations to specific lines. But The Rise of Skywalker is almost a meta movie about how Star Wars is cool and people's memories of it are cool, and their ability to follow an endless string of references is cool. Finn John Boyega, Poe Dameron get their share of screen time alongside classic characters Lando Calrissian, Chewbacca, C-3PO, who's still the endlessly belittled butt of derisive jokes, even as he briefly, hurriedly takes on his most central role in the series to date. Rose Tico, played by Kelly Marie Tran, has an insultingly minimal role this time out. Who cares? She wasn't a good character, and that's nothing against Kelly Marie Tran, who, at the premiere to this the other night, looked absolutely beautiful. She is a gorgeous woman. Beautiful, funny, sweet, just a poorly written character. I hope she goes on and has a brilliant acting career. I truly do. Because Ryan Johnson did her no favors by making her look like a potato. But the late Carrie Fisher as Leia gets much more screen time as previously shot footage allows, and it's a moving send-off. But having the people in charge of Star Wars legacy acknowledging their own inability to move forward is a sad way for the story to end. All right, Rotten Tomatoes. 56%. Ouch. God, that really hurts. That really hurts. I mean, ouch, baby. Very ouch. Yeah, and 12,000 people want to see it. Rise of Skywalker simply feels like a shrug of the shoulders and a march into the expected. Rise of Skywalker operates as if only the cinematic tradition at its disposal hails from a galaxy far, far away. The movie predicated on satisfying fans, The Rise of Skywalker is a distinctly unsatisfying conclusion to what had been an imperfect but mostly good few films. No, they weren't. They were all garbage. David Sims from The Atlantic, The Rise of Skywalker is a fitting epitaph for the thrills and limits of repetition. May it be the last episode of a saga that should have ended long ago. The movie snaps together like a jigsaw puzzle, a series concluding beats that seems inevitable and perfect and designed to please all parties, such as long as you don't dwell on the logic. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker is a fitting last movie. It's long, maddening, fun in bits, fantastic in parts, and so desperate to stir itself into legend that we urge it on like parents screaming at their tots in an egg and spoon race. As someone who has spent most of my life loving this franchise, with a career that has been often based around it, I left happy. Skywalker saga has been brought to an end, and sadly, that was the only goal The Rise of Skywalker seemed to have. The spiritual end of an era manages to thrill us. Rise of Skywalker may deliver on the Star Wars nostalgia, but fails as a satisfying conclusion to this once epic franchise. Fans will find more to like about The Rise of Skywalker than dislike, and even in its faults, there lies joy of flying through a familiar universe one last time. While elements certainly shine, surprisingly poor storytelling really hurts what could have been a grand finale. It's not unlike a roller coaster ride that it has just enough thrills to satisfy fans, but you can also see exactly where the ride begins and ends before you strap in. There's nothing bold about this movie. That's Jeremy Johns, who I watched his review, and he was absolutely right. With another billion-dollar box office movie in line, it feels though Abrams playing things safe, finding ways to tie up loose ends, mollifying the fan base is going to tie rather than the win. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker suffers the misfortune of having a director who cares more about digging up a franchise's past than moving forward with an original story. Finale needs to be epic, and Episode 9 brings a long overdue increase of scope. Jesus. Rise of Skywalker, the ultimate conclusion of the franchise that started in 1977. Oh. The Rise of Skywalker is a bad movie and a miserable finale that serves no purpose other than to reassure at least some of the adult fans of the original Star Wars that they are still the chosen ones of the pop culture galaxy. Panders so much to the fans that anything that should feel remotely heartfelt comes as inauthentic fan service. These are probably Last Jedi fans. The Rise of Skywalker wasn't a total bust. If you hated The Last Jedi, you might even love it, but it's hard for me to see it as a successful third installment to this trilogy. A parade of beloved characters walking through and waving as well-remembered scenes are reenacted around them. It is not a story, but a pantomime. Now, this is full spoilers, so if you don't want to know what happens in the end of The Rise of Skywalker, Episode 9, bitch slap that like button for me on the way out. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. Are you going to see this dumpster fire? Where I picked up, where the leak came out on YouTube this morning, about 3 hours ago, was Rey engaged in battle with Sidious. He's shooting Force lightning at her lightsaber. She is blocking him with it. After Sidious says, "I am all the Sith." Of course, that's just a setup for Rey to throw her other hand back, summon another lightsaber, and say, "And I am all the Jedi." And then she blows him up. I'm not joking. She blows him up. As a true Star Wars fan, and you can say what you want, the sequel trilogy has just been a train wreck. It has been a train wreck. This movie is just playing on nostalgia and trying to retcon the mistakes that Roundhead Rian Johnson made in The Last Jedi, which the critics like blew their load over The Last Jedi. But of course, this one they hate it because it's not a pandering piece of art house shit made by a roundhead soy boy who sits in a coffee shop and just goes, "Look, here's the first draft. Disney's gonna make this into a movie." I'm not saying J.J. Abrams is better because he doesn't know how to write an ending. He operates on his mystery box bullshit, which is trash filmmaking and it's lazy. Let me know in the comments below what you think. We're up to 127 subscribers. Please consider subscribing to the channel. We're kicking ass and taking names here. We've got the boardroom tonight, 8:30 p.m. on Raiders of the Lost Flicks. I see this as an absolute win, ladies and gentlemen. And I was asked by somebody, a friend of mine, well, how do you see this as a win because Star Wars is basically getting trashed? And my thoughts are, well, Star Wars isn't trashed. What Disney did is trashed. Now, Disney has gotten it right with The Mandalorian. Absolutely, give you a pat on the back for that. But why do you think they released an episode of The Mandalorian the day before Episode 9 is released to the public? Deflection, maybe? Exquisite day. As soon as I'm done editing this, I get to sit back and revel in the fact that we were right. It feels so good. Vindication. Feels so good. Now, have a great day. And if I don't see you, a pleasant tomorrow.